My name is Donna Washington, and I'm a professional storyteller. And I've been a professional storyteller for 32 years. And during these times when we need to reach out and hold the people we love close to us, our families, your moms, your dads, your grandmothers, who's ever close inside your house, it's also a time to share. I'm sure that there are people in your house who have stories that you might like to hear and stories that they might like to share. And I'm sure there are books around or books online that you can read and share. So I thought I would give you a story today that's fun to share. It's called The Wise King, the Cook, and the Farmer. And it's a story that I've told for a long time. And the story actually changes at the end based on the students that I've had over the years who've wanted that story to have a slightly different ending. And so I'm going to share it with you. It goes like this. Once there was a king who was incredibly wise. He was so wise, in fact, that people from all over the world wanted to live in his kingdom just in case they got in trouble because they figured he was so wise he'd be able to solve their problems. Which meant that there wasn't a lot of extra space for people to have shops. And a cook came to live in that kingdom, and he was such a good cook. He made the most delicious stew. Oh, the stew was amazing. And he sold it out of his little cart. And he would go through the city, and people would follow him around waiting to get hungry. It was that delicious. Oh, the smell. People would lounge around, and the stew was expensive because that cookie was greedy and pinched and mean. He lived alone. He didn't have anyone around him, and only the money kept him warm. But it didn't make him warm. It just made him grouchy and pinched. Well, out in the countryside, there was a farmer. He had 7 children. He had a lot of family. And every year he'd work his farm as hard as he could. And at the end of the year, after he sold everything, he only ever had enough money for shoe leather for his children and maybe a nice present for his wife. And one year, after having worked his farm and he got all the money in, he did really only have shoe leather and maybe a present for his wife, if he was careful how he bought things. And before he left in the morning, his wife gave him a nice big loaf of bread. And every day, or every time he went to town, she would do that. He would break it in half, and he'd put half in his satchel, and half he would keep, and he would just nibble on as he went down the road. And then he'd get to town, and he would do his shopping, and then on the way home, he would take his bread out, the other half, and he'd eat the other half. But that particular day, he just wasn't thinking, and he started nibbling on his bread before he broke it in half, which meant by the time he got to town, well, he'd eaten most of it, and he only had the heel left. Oh, it's going to be a long, hungry walk home. Oh, well. He put his satchel, his bread in satchel, and he started looking for a shoe leather. But then, he smelled a smell. Oh my gosh, what is that? Oh, he started following his nose. You know how your stomach gets when you're kind of hungry and your stomach smells something, you smell something good. Oh my God, what is that? He came into a square, and there were all these people lounging around, and some people were eating the most delicious looking stew, and other people were just wishing they could be eating delicious stew. And the farmer, oh my gosh, he followed his nose right to that cart. Oh, and he heard, "What are you doing?" He backed up. There was a little pinched man in front of him. He said, "Why are you standing here? What are you doing?" And the farmer said, "Are you going to buy some stew? Because if you're not, there are other people who want to buy stew. Get back, get back." And so the farmer backed up. And the cook was, ladling out the stew. And the farmer was so hungry, and he reached in his pocket and pulled out his little heel of bread. Oh, it didn't look all that great. And then he got an idea. The next time the cook opened up his stew pot, the farmer waved his bread in the air, and some of the steam went in, and then he ate it. Oh, it was so good. And as soon as he was done, a hand grabbed on to his wrist, and he looked, and there was the cook with a little pinched face. He said, "Now you owe me 2 silver pieces." And the farmer said, 2 silver pieces? Why would I owe you 2 silver pieces? You stole the smell of my stew. You put it in your bread and ate it. You owe me 2 silver pieces. He said, "I didn't get a bowl. I just had the smell. Everyone can have the smell. Why should I pay you for something everyone has?" No. You stole the smell. And they had this big argument. Some people in the square, they could afford to pay for the stew, so they got behind the farmer. They said, "Cook, you're being wrong. Don't charge this man for the smell of the stew. That's ridiculous." But some people could not afford the stew, and they thought maybe if they sided with the cook, he might give them some stew. And they backed the cook up. "You have to pay him, farmer. How dare you?" Got this big brouhaha, this big problem right there in the middle of town. The soldiers came and broke everyone up, but they didn't know what to do either. So they took the cook and the farmer to see the wise king. And the wise king listened And he said, "Farmer, the cook has a point. You did steal something. You're going to have to pay him." And the farmer's heart sank because he really would not be able to buy anything for his children. And in the wintertime, their little feet would be very cold. He said, "Your Majesty, I don't have 2 silver pieces." The cook said, the king said, "We will work this out. Cook, go back to your cart and wait." The cook's eyes were big. He was so excited. He scuttled on out his little pinched self. And the king said, go to the treasure room and bring me a bag of gold." And the farmer thought, "I don't even have enough to buy shoe leather. He's going to give this cook gold." I thought he was wise. Well, when the bag came back, the king said to the farmer, "You must pay the cook in full. You go down to his cart," and he pulled out a gold piece. "You go over to his cart and you bang this gold piece on the side of the cart 2 times so he can hear the sound of your money." And he put it back in the bag. "And you can keep what's left in the bag." Well, the farmer took the bag, and at first he didn't understand, and he smiled. "I will do as you say, sire." And so the farmer went down to the cart. He opened the bag. He took out that gold piece, and when the cook saw the gold, his eyes widened. He'd only asked for silver, but the king was going to give him gold. And then the farmer went ting, ting, and rapped the gold coin on the side of the cart so that the sound of money went into the air. And then he closed the bag, tied it up, and went on to do his shopping. And at first the cook did not understand what happened. And then he realized, and he was furious. But what could he say? He'd been properly paid. Well, the farmer bought shoe leather, the best shoe leather for his children, and a lovely present for his wife, and something to eat, including some stew from the cook. And when he was eating the stew, the cook came over and said, "I see what the king did, and I'm sorry I was so grouchy." And the farmer said, "Why are you so grouchy?" And the cook said, "Well, I don't know. It just seems..." And the farmer said, "Would you like to come to my house for supper?" Well, no one had ever invited the cook over to eat. And so he walked back to the farmer's house, and they had a wonderful supper. And the farmer told his wife what happened, and she said, "Well, it seems to me like maybe the 2 of you should work together. You do have a lot of vegetables here, you know." And so the farmer and the cook made a deal, and the farmer sold his vegetables to the cook, and the cook often came over and had dinner at their house, and they actually went into business together. And both of them did really well, because now the cook had a family, and the farmer, well, he had an enterprise besides just farming. Be it fair or be it funny, the man was paid with the sound of money. You are surrounded by riches. Mind the stories. Enjoy them. And that is the story of the wise king, the cook,